අද්විතීය 200 Mbps ස්පීඩ් එකකින් ශ්‍රී ලංකාවේ වේගවත්ම සහ පුළුල්තම හෝම් බ්‍රෝඩ්බෑන්ඩ් සම්බන්ධතාවය වන SLT මොබිටෙල් දේශීය ෆයිබර් බලවේගය ඔබත් අදම අත්විඳින්න.
හරිම සුදුයි.
Tonight on First at 9, this Wednesday the 19th of April 2023. No compromise. The education of children cannot be held hostage, says President Ranil Wickremesinghe. Says he's willing to make education sector and examinations an essential service.
I am thinking of making education, especially examinations, a compulsory service. You can't stop the education of children, no? But what nonsense is this? But no one is going to hold the education of children as hostage.
Heatwave. Met Department says that the heatwave conditions in the country are expected to subside by end of May. Ambitious plans. Sri Lanka Tourism Development Authority expects the country to have a total of 400,000 tourist arrivals by April 20th.
Alliance Finance මෙතුරු රන්නයි සේවාවෙන් රන් පවුම්කට රුපියල් 1,70,000ක ඉහළ අධිකාරමක්.
ඔබේ විශ්වාසය දෙනු සෙන්සුරයින් දැන් ළඟමැති ෆාමසියෙන් ලබාගත හැක.
From AdaDerana, this is AdaDerana First at 9 with Andrew Bernard. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
A very good evening and welcome to AdaDerana 24's English News. In the top story for tonight, President Ranil Wickremesinghe said today that the education of children cannot be held hostage and that he will not hesitate to make education an essential service under the emergency law and take the necessary legal action against any teacher who does not make themselves available to mark the A-level examination papers by next week. The head of state made these remarks whilst joining the discussion held at the Presidential Secretariat this morning to review the progress of the special budget proposals implemented in the year 2023 by the Ministries of Education and Higher Education, Labour and Foreign Employment.
Why can't you mark it with all the teachers that are available? If they don't come, they don't come. That's not an answer I can give in Parliament. Any minister has now said there's a political force behind it. So now you have to go from there. No? If the footer says they are not a political force, then it gets dragged on some more. So you have come toward this thing. One is, I am thinking of making education, especially examinations, a compulsory service. Others can shout. In the country, it will be the most popular thing. And then secondly, exams committee, GCE exams committee. Both those I will put it by emergency and then you can bring the legislation. So one of the two tell me, all these parents are waiting. All those who marked the papers last time must be available for service now. If not, I will prosecute them and take their property off. So it's not a question of moratorium. You will be bankrupt. That's all. You can't stop the education of children, no? But what nonsense is this? So anyway, work out one of the two and tell me. That's all. By next week, I must tell the AG to be ready with the emergency regulation. Let's see which MP is going to vote against it. I'll ask for a vote by name. But no one is going to hold the education of children as hostage. That I am not allowing. That can't be allowed. You all must come up with a solution end of this week. If you don't have one, I will take it up in cabinet and then we will decide what to do. Speak to the minister, then we'll have a meeting this week. Now the minister has also made a statement. We can't go back on it and we can only go forward.
Now, former Attorney General Dappula Dilivera's attorney appeared before the Terrorism Investigation Department today on behalf of him and submitted a 7-page legal objection against the summons issued by the TIT to the former Attorney General. The former Attorney General was informed yesterday to appear before the TIT today in order to record statements regarding his controversial statement pertaining to the Easter Sunday terror attacks in 2019.
Former Attorney General Dappula Dilivera was informed yesterday to appear before the Terrorism Investigation Division today in order to record information on his controversial statement pertaining to the Easter Sunday terror attacks in 2019. In May 2021, he claimed that there had been a grand conspiracy with regard to the 2019 April attacks, noting that evidence and intelligence material and relevant pieces of information must be carefully evaluated in order to reach a conclusion on those who led the attacks. The former Attorney General added that the information provided by the State Intelligence Service with regard to the targets, places, times, method of attacks and other information remains clear evidence that there was a grand conspiracy. However, the former Attorney General had a lawyer appear on his behalf to the TID this morning despite being summoned to provide a statement. Accordingly, the lawyer representing the Oliveira appeared before the TID this morning and stated that a 7-page legal objection to the matter in question has been submitted to the Terrorism Investigation Division.
The member of the Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna, S.M. Chandrasena, says that it was the district leaders of the SLPP that has continued to be a strength to the president. And if he is to lose that, it would make it hard for the president to implement his vision. Meanwhile, leader of the Pivituru Heloramaya, Udaya Gammanpilla, emphasized that the nominations for the local government election must be discarded if the Election Commission does not make an agreement with the government with regard to the funds that are required to have the local government elections.
ජනාධිපතිතුමා පත් කරන්න මූලික වෙච්ච බහුතරය ලබා දුන්නේ අපි පොහොට්ටුව. පොට ශ්‍රී ලංකා පොදුජන පෙරමුණේ දිස්ත්‍රික් නායකයන්ට විශාල ශක්තියක් තියෙනවා. ඉතින් ඒගොල්ලෝ අතහැරලා යනවනම් ඒක ජනාධිපතිතුමාට ලොකු අඩුපාඩුවක් වෙනවා. ඉතින් ඒ නිසා ජනාධිපතිතුමා කල්පනා කරලා තව දුන්නත් නැතත් කැබිනට් සංශෝධනය විය යුතුයි කියන එකයි මම කියන්නේ.
පුංචි ඡන්දය දිගින් දිගටම කල් දමන්න සිද්ධ වෙලා තිබෙන්නේ මැතිවරණයට අවශ්‍ය අරමුදල් ලබා ගැනීම පිළිබඳ ආණ්ඩුවත් සමග නිශ්චිත එකඟතාවයකින් තොරව මැතිවරණ කොමිසම විසින් දින නියම කිරීමෙන් මේ නිසා මැතිවරණයේ පැවැත්වීමට අරමුදල් ලබා දීම පිළිබඳ ආණ්ඩුවත් සමග නිශ්චිත එකඟතාවයකට එළඹෙන්න බැරි නම් මැතිවරණ කොමිසම වාම බාරගත් නාම යෝජනා ඕසි කළ යුතුයි. ඒ නාම යෝජනා ඕසි කළොත් අර රජයේ සේවක අපේක්ෂකයන්ට නැවත තමන්ගේ සේවයට වාර්තා කරන්න වැටුප් ලබා ගන්න පුළුවන් වෙනවා.
Now, the Department of Meteorology warned the public to be cautious due to the prevailing hot weather, as expect the temperatures in several provinces to remain between the range of 39 and 45 Celsius, which they term as a level of caution. Speaking to AdaDerana English News, Director Forecast at the Department of Meteorology, Dr. Shiromani Jayawardena, said the hot weather conditions are expected to continue until the onset of the southwest monsoon period, which is towards the end of May.
Since the past few days, most parts of Sri Lanka, including Colombo, are experiencing heat waves, contributing to an excessive hot weather. In this backdrop, the Natural Hazards Early Warning Centre of the Department of Meteorology issued an amber-coloured heat index advisory, meaning the heat index is expected to increase up to caution levels tomorrow at some places in the eastern, northern, north central and northwestern provinces and in the Monaragala and Hambantota districts. According to the Met Department, the temperature felt by the human body during this period will be between 39 and 45 degrees Celsius. With that being the case, the department urged the general public to stay hydrated and take breaks in the shade as often as possible, check on the elderly and the sick, limit strenuous outdoor activities and to wear lightweight or white or light-coloured clothing. Speaking to AdaDerana English News, Director Forecast of the Department of Meteorology, Dr. Shiromani Jayawardena said the hot weather conditions are expected to continue until the end of May.
We are in the intermonsoon season, that is a transition period between northeast monsoon and southwest monsoon. So there is no predominant wind flow across Sri Lanka. Calm winds create high humidity in the environment, which increase the heat that is felt by our bodies. Heat index is calculated using temperature and humidity, and this is the condition that is felt on our body. The heat index is expected to increase up to caution level at some places in the eastern, northern, north central and northwestern provinces, as well as in Monaragala and Hambantota districts. Hot weather condition will last till the onset of southwest monsoon. Climatologically, the onset date is 25th May with 7 days standard deviation. If there's like heavy thunderstorms, there can be some sort of relief, but we can expect this hot weather will last till onset of southwest monsoon.
However, In its general weather forecast for tomorrow, the Met Department said showers or thunder showers are likely to occur at several places in the western, Sabaragamuwa, central, northwestern and north-central provinces and in the Galle and Mathura districts during the afternoon or night.
Now, the chairman of the Sri Lanka Tourism Development Authority, Priyantha Fernando, says that he expects the country to record 400,000 tourist arrivals by the 20th of April for this year. So far, the country has recorded over 390,000 tourist arrivals to the country from January 2023 until the 16th of April last month, with a majority of tourists reported from Russia and India. Sri Lanka's tourism has been taking a turn for the better since the year started. The number of tourists crossed the 100,000 mark in January this year with 102,545 tourists recorded. This is also 20,218 more tourists recorded in January 2023 compared to January 2022, when 82,327 tourist arrivals had been recorded. Since then, the number of tourists have been on the rise. In the month of February, 107,639 tourists were recorded, while 125,495 tourists had visited the country in the month of March. The country with the most number of tourist arrivals were reported from Russia, India and the United Kingdom last month. According to the Sri Lanka Tourism Development Authority, tourist arrivals for the month of April since the 1st to the 16th of this month has so far been 56,402. As such, Sri Lanka has so far recorded a total of 392,081 tourist arrivals since January to the 16th of April. He went on to say that they're hopeful that they will achieve the target of 400,000 tourists by the 20th of this month, adding that most of the tourists who arrived since January were of Russian and Indian nationalities. He further said that although high number of Chinese tourists were expected this month, this was not the case and therefore they're expecting more Chinese tourists next month. According to the SLTD's monthly tourist arrival report for March, 79,891 Russian tourists and 46,432 Indian tourists had visited Sri Lanka since the start of this year. The report also placed Kazakhstan, Denmark, Austria, Pakistan and Belgium as the top 5 potential tourist markets for March. The report also highlighted that a majority of the Russian tourists visiting the country had arrived on an official visit, with only close to 40% of Russian tourists visiting for vacation. On the contrary, 50% of Indian tourists had arrived in the island for vacation purposes, while 20% of them visited the island for meetings, incentives, conferences and exhibitions. Now, Minister of Power and Energy Kanchana Wijesekara said that he has taken steps to brief all relevant parties on the Ceylon Electricity Board restructuring roadmap approved by the Cabinet of Ministers and the proposed time frame. Accordingly, the Minister has held discussions on the plans of restructuring the CEB with the Senior Engineers Union, the Electrical Superintendents Union and the Reforms Committee members this morning. Taking Twitter, Minister Wijesekara mentioned that all parties assured their fullest cooperation for the proposals and requested to expedite the process. In addition, they have submitted their proposals in managing the current employees and employee benefits and also the integration of renewable energy and procurement, while emphasizing on a transparent mechanism in implementing reforms. And we'll be back with your business segment right after this short commercial break.
ගොඩමඩ පෙරලි කරන බලපුළුවන් කාරයා මහින්ද්‍රා යුවෝ ටීමෝ වෙතින්. වැඩම ගොඩයි ගොඩම තමයි. ස්වරාජ් ට්‍රැක්ටර් ටීමෝ වෙතින්. මේ අලුත් අවුරුද්දේ හිත පිරෙන ගනුදෙනුවකට හොඳම තැන හිත ගිය තැන බැංකුව HNB.
අත්දැකීම් බහුලවෙන්ම තාක්ෂණික දැනුමින් සන්නද්ධ පිරිසකගේ සේවය නිරතුරුව. දශක 6කට වඩා වැඩි අත්දැකීම්. තාක්ෂණික නිලධාරීන් 165 දෙනෙකුගේ සේවය. Lanka Insurance.
Welcome back. Now, the central bank stated that the manufacturing PMI for the month of March expanded for the month of March to 51.4 index points on the back of New Year's season demand. Similarly, the services sector PMI for the month of March also showed strong growth, recording an index value of 56.1. Manufacturing Purchasing Managers Index turned positive in March 2023 after 9 consecutive survey rounds, recording an index value of 51.4. The month-on-month expansion was driven by increases in new orders and production sub-indices, mainly due to the seasonal demand. However, employment, stock of purchasers and suppliers' delivery time sub-indices remained below the natural threshold. The increase in new orders and production was mainly driven by the manufacture, food and beverages sector. However, employment continued to decline mostly due to the non-replacement of retirements and resignations. Further, stock of purchasers declined in March as well, as some firms used their stocks of raw materials, delaying new purchases, with the anticipation of a decline in raw material prices in the period ahead. Suppliers' delivery time was slightly shortened during the month. Meanwhile, the global manufacturing PMI recorded a value of 49.6 in March 2023, with a decrease of 0.3 index points from February 2023. Manufacturing PMIs of India and Singapore improved at a higher pace in March 2023, while it increased at a slower rate in Russia compared to the previous month. However, manufacturing PMIs of the Eurozone, UK and USA deteriorated in the month of March compared to the previous month. Moreover, the manufacturing PMI of China remained at a natural threshold level in March 2023. In the meantime, the services sector PMI returned to the growth territory, recording an index value of 55.1 in March 2023, indicating an expansion across the services sector. This was driven by the increases observed in new businesses, business activities, and expectations for new activity. New businesses increased in March 2023 compared to February 2023, particularly with the increases observed in financial services, insurance, and professional services subsectors. Business activities in the service sector rebounded in March 2023 after observing a decline in the previous month. Accordingly, financial service subsector continued to improve with the increases in deposits, while other personal activities subsector also exhibited a significant improvement. Meanwhile, human health, insurance, education and professional services subsectors also recorded a slight increase during the month. However, business activities related to wholesale and retail trade subsector continue to deteriorate despite some improvements seen ahead of the festive season. Meanwhile, backlogs of work also decreased at a slower pace during the month. Now, the Colombo Bourse closed lower today, dragged by losses in industrial and financial sector stocks, as investors are waiting for clear directions on the economic front. The CSE All Share Index fell 0.56% to 9,294.142, marking a third straight session of losses. Meanwhile, the S&P SL20 also lost 0.68% to end the day at 2,710.43 points. Trading volume for the All Share Price Index fell to 38 million shares from 58.4 million in the previous session. The market's turnover fell to 632.7 million rupees from 1.14 billion rupees in the previous session. The transportation sector was the top contributor to the market turnover, while the sector index lost 4.6%. Meanwhile, high net worth and institutional investor participation was noted in National Development Bank, Haley's and Ceylon coal stores. Foreign investors were net sellers in the equity market, offloading stocks worth 85.9 million rupees, while domestic investors were net buyers, purchasing stocks worth 591 million rupees. Now let's take a look at how the Sri Lankan rupee traded against other major currencies during the day. Now, oil prices dropped sharply today, sliding by 2% as potential US interest rate hikes that could slow growth and curb oil consumption outweighed strong Chinese economic data and falling US inventories. Meanwhile, in Europe, the European Bank officials have suggested that interest rates need to continue rising. Brent crude futures went down by $1.70 to end at $83.07 a barrel, while the West Texas Intermediate US crude fell by $1.64 to $79.22 a barrel. Meanwhile, according to Atlanta Fed President Raphael Bostic, the US Federal Reserve is likely to have one more interest rate rise in store as the central bank continues to battle inflation. Markets are pricing in an 86% chance of the Fed raising rates by 25 basis points at its May policy meeting. In Europe, European Central Bank officials are also wary of inflation and have suggested that interest rates need to continue rising. The economy of top crude oil importer China grew by a faster than expected 4.5% in the first quarter, and the country's oil refinery throughout rose to record levels in March. The official inventory report by the Energy Information Administration, the statistical arm of the US Department of Energy, is due to be released at 14:30 GMT on Wednesday. Now, global stocks fell today while a rally in the dollar gained momentum as investors' focus honed in on what the Federal Reserve may have to do to tame inflation rather than on the recent problem in the US banking sector. The Pan-European Stock 600 index was down 0.3%, with mining stocks down 1.5% after recent gains on Chinese economic data. Tech and energy stocks were both also around 1.5% lower. Meanwhile, US stock futures fell between 0.5 and 0.7%. The S&P 500 fell for the first day in 3 as companies including Netflix and Morgan Stanley declined after posting first quarter results. The benchmark index lost 0.4%, while the Nasdaq Composite dropped 0.66%. The Dow Jones Industrial Average, meanwhile, was 0.4%. So far this week, trading has been choppy as investors evaluate a rush of earnings. Meanwhile, Asia-Pacific markets traded mixed today as Wall Street earnings season continued and US Federal Reserve officials delivered mixed signals on future rate hikes. Japan's Nikkei 225 dipped by 0.18%, while the Topix fell 0.02% to finish at 2,040.38 points. South Korea's Kospi rose by 0.16%, while the Kosdaq was also up marginally and closed at 909.2. Mainland Chinese markets were all lower, with the Shanghai Composite down 0.68% and the Shenzhen Component fell 0.84%. Hong Kong's Hang Seng Index was 1.23% lower and the Hang Seng Tech Index lost 2.3%. And that's all the news we have for you this evening. Join us again tomorrow for the very latest news at the very same time. Tune into our social media pages to stay updated on the very latest news. A pleasant evening and good night.
For news and information you can trust 24 hours a day, visit AdaDerana.lk.